They say hospitals are places of healing, but if you've ever worked the night shift, you know there's another side. When the visitors leave, when the hallways go dark and the monitors start to flicker, strange things happen. Stories that never make it into the official reports. Stories that get passed between nurses like urban legends, except they're true. At least, true enough to make you double-check every shadow. Tonight, we're diving into real night shift horror stories, told by the people who lived them. Grab your flashlight, keep your back to the wall, and welcome to Midnight Scroll. Code Blue in room 309. I've been a night nurse for almost 7 years now, worked in a few different hospitals, some better than others, but nothing compares to what happened last winter during my shift at St. Mary's General. St. Mary's is old. Parts of the building haven't been renovated since the 1950s. There's this one wing on the 3rd floor that's been closed off for years. Structural issues, asbestos, budget cuts, pick your reason. Officially, no patients are supposed to be up there. No power, no staff, no equipment. It's just storage and dust. But that night, around 3:10 a.m., I was sitting at the nurses' station when the overhead speakers crackled. Then came the announcement. Code Blue, 3rd floor, West Wing, room 309. I froze. Everyone else froze too. There shouldn't have been a Code Blue up there. The house supervisor grabbed the radio and called down to the ER desk, thinking it was a mistake. They checked their system, but sure enough, the code had been triggered from room 309. The emergency button had been pressed, manually, from inside the room. By policy, we had to respond. So me, the charge nurse, and 2 orderlies took the stairs up. As soon as we opened the door to the 3rd floor, we were hit with cold air. Not just drafty, refrigerator cold. The hallway lights were out, so we used our pen lights to make our way toward 309. The hall felt longer than I remembered, like the walls had stretched. We reached the room, and I swear I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The door was halfway open. I pushed it the rest of the way and we stepped inside. The room was empty. No bed, no equipment, just bare floors and cracked walls. But in the corner, the wall-mounted emergency button was lit up, still glowing bright red. That's when one of the orderlies said, "Do you hear that?" We went silent, and from somewhere further down the hall, we all heard it. The distinct sound of a heart monitor flatlining, long, continuous beep, coming from a room at the very end of the wing. But when we checked that room, it was just as empty as the others. No bed, no power outlets, nothing. The beeping stopped as soon as we stepped inside. We left that floor immediately. Maintenance checked the wiring the next morning. They swore none of the circuits in that wing were even live. The emergency buttons weren't connected to anything anymore. And room 309? It was sealed shut that same afternoon. But sometimes, when I pass that stairwell during night rounds, I still hear the beeping. Faint, but definitely there. Like someone somewhere on that floor is still waiting for help. The patient with no chart. Night shift is strange. Time feels different. Slower, heavier somehow. Patients sleep, lights dim, and the hospital becomes a different kind of place. Things move at the edge of your vision. Sounds echo from nowhere. But what happened 3 months ago still keeps me awake some nights. I was working the 5th floor med-surg unit. It was just me and one other nurse on duty. Around 2:40 a.m., I was finishing up meds when I noticed something on the board. A new patient name had appeared, room 517, which was weird because I hadn't seen anyone come up from ER. I checked the computer system. No admission record, no vitals logged, no physician orders, nothing. I figured maybe the other nurse had admitted someone and hadn't entered the data yet, so I went to check the room. As soon as I opened the door, I felt off. The air felt thick, heavy. The patient was lying in bed, under the blanket, completely still. I couldn't see their face. The blanket was pulled up way too high, almost over their head. I stepped closer, said, "Sir, are you awake?" No response. I moved closer, reached out to pull the blanket down, and that's when the overhead speakers went off. Rapid beeping. Emergency code on the opposite wing. I left the room immediately, running down the hall to respond. Turns out, one of our post-op patients had pulled out their IV and was bleeding heavily. It took about 20 minutes to stabilize them. When I finally got back to room 517, the bed was empty, neatly made, like no one had ever been there. I asked the other nurse about it, and she just stared at me. Said room 517 had been empty all night. I told her I saw someone in there. I even described the way the blanket was pulled up. She shook her head, looked genuinely scared, then said, "That's not funny. We stopped using 517 after last winter, remember? That's where Mark—" She didn't finish the sentence. But I knew what she meant. Mark was a nurse who had worked with us. He passed away from an overdose in that very room. They turned it into storage for a while after that. I went back later that morning, opened the door again. The room was locked from the inside. No way anyone could have gotten in or out. I still don't know who or what I saw that night. The man in the hallway. This one messed me up for a while. I was working in the ICU on night shift. Small hospital, only 6 ICU beds, so it's usually quiet overnight unless something goes bad. Around 4 a.m, I was doing charting at the main desk. The monitors were silent. All my patients were stable. I stood up to stretch, glanced down the hall toward the surgical wing, and that's when I saw him. A man standing at the far end of the hallway. He was wearing a hospital gown, thin, pale, looked disoriented. I figured maybe a confused patient had wandered out of post-op recovery. I grabbed my flashlight and started walking toward him. But as I got closer, something felt wrong. The hallway, it seemed longer than usual, like no matter how many steps I took, I wasn't getting closer. The air got colder, like I'd walked into a freezer. I called out to him, "Sir, can I help you? Are you okay?" He didn't respond, just kept standing there, staring at me. As I got about halfway down the hall, the fluorescent lights above me started flickering. One by one, they blinked out, starting from where I was, moving toward him. With each light that went out, I could see him more clearly. His eyes were wrong. Too wide, too dark, almost like there weren't any eyes at all, just empty sockets. I stopped in my tracks, heart pounding. Then, with the last flicker of light before darkness, I saw him grin. This horrible, stretched, unnatural grin that reached nearly ear to ear. The hallway went completely dark. I froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then, suddenly, the lights snapped back on, full brightness, and the hallway was empty. Not a single person in sight. I ran back to the ICU, locked the unit door, pulled up the hallway cameras on the monitor. Nothing. No one on the footage, but for about 10 seconds, right around 4:12 a.m., the video feed glitched out completely. Static. And in one single frozen frame, there he was, right at the nurse's station door, staring straight into the camera. I transferred floors a week later. I won't work nights near the surgical wing anymore. The bed alarm that shouldn't have gone off. Working night shifts in a nursing home, you get used to false alarms. bed sensors going off because someone shifted in their sleep, call lights buzzing from confused residents hitting buttons by accident. But this wasn't that. It was around 3:45 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was finishing charting at the nurses' station when the bed alarm for Mr. Jacobs went off. Mr. Jacobs was a fall risk, late-stage dementia, could barely walk without help. So when I saw his alarm going off, I rushed down the hall toward his room. I was halfway there when I realized something. Mr. Jacobs wasn't in his room. He'd passed away 3 days earlier. The room was empty, cleaned out, new paint on the walls for the next admission. The bed itself wasn't even in there anymore. I stopped outside the door, heart racing. The door was closed, which was weird. Housekeeping usually leaves them open when rooms are empty. I pushed it open, and the smell hit me first. Not dust, not cleaner, but that unmistakable nursing home smell, like stale air, sweat, and something metallic. The room was dark, but there was just enough light coming from the hallway for me to see the shape of someone sitting on the floor, in the corner, legs out, head down, rocking slightly. I stood there, frozen, whispered, "Mr. Jacobs," even though I knew how impossible that was. The rocking stopped, and the figure slowly, painfully, started to stand up. That was enough for me. I slammed the door shut and ran back to the nurses' station. I called security. They searched the entire wing. Found nothing. The motion detectors in the hallway never triggered. But when I checked the room the next morning, there were 2 faint footprints on the tile, like someone had been standing there, barefoot. The weird part? The footprints were facing the door, like whoever, or whatever, had been in there, was watching me leave. The mirror in the day room. Every floor of our facility has a day room, just a small space with chairs, a TV, a few puzzles and books for the residents. But the one on the second floor? There's this mirror on the far wall, big, rectangular, probably original to when the building was first put up. The thing about that mirror is, well, nobody wants to sit near it at night. I didn't really understand why until last month. It was a slow night, maybe 2:30 a.m. I was making rounds, and when I passed the day room, I noticed something weird. The lights were off, but the TV was on, static, just hissing snow across the screen, which was strange because I'd turned it off earlier. I walked in, turned off the TV again, and when I turned around, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Except it wasn't quite right. My reflection was still sitting in one of the chairs, staring at me. I froze, blinked a few times, and when I looked again, the chair was empty. I laughed it off, told myself I was just tired. But for the rest of the night, every time I passed that room, I felt like something in the mirror was watching me. A few nights later, one of the residents, a woman with advanced Alzheimer's, wandered out of her room and into the day room. I found her sitting in that same chair, staring into the mirror, whispering to herself. When I got closer, I realized she was repeating the same phrase over and over. "That's not me. That's not me. That's not me." I gently took her back to bed, but when I went back to turn off the lights, I swear, just for a second, I saw 2 of her in the reflection, both sitting side by side, one smiling, one staring blankly at me. I avoid the second-floor day room now, and I never, ever look in that mirror after dark. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever encountered something horrifying in the hospital after dark. You've been listening to Midnight Scroll. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling stories. Stay safe, and remember, not every empty bed stays empty for long.